Welcome back to Inside Outer Cape. I'm Laura Potenza, here as always with my partner,
Nate
Tara. And today we are settling a debate.
No, we are not settling it. We are presenting both sides fairly and letting you decide.
That's what I said.
You said settling. Settling implies a winner. There is no winner. There's only Provincetown.
Right. So today we are talking about one of the first conversations we have with almost every buyer who comes to us. West End versus East End. Which part of town do you want to be in? And does it actually matter?
Well, spoiler, it matters, and it also doesn't. We'll explain.
Okay. So here's what we see constantly. A buyer comes to us. Sometimes they've visited Provincetown a few times, and sometimes they've been coming for decades. And when we ask where they want to be, the answer is always the same.
West End.
Mm-hmm. West End. It is the default. It's where people think they want to be before they really start looking.
And it's not irrational. The West End has a very specific identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful. It's got some iconic spots, and we'll get into all of that.
Right. But we find consistently across buyers at every price point is that people who start the search saying West End only almost always open up to the whole town once they start actually looking. Mm-hmm. And a meaningful number of them actually end up in the the East End, mm-hmm. and wonder why they ever had a preference.
I've lived in both ends of town, and I have opinions. I'm keeping them to myself.
And that is a first.
Oh, yes, it's a professional milestone for me.
Okay. So before we get into the character of each neighborhood, let's just talk about the shape of the town, because it genuinely affects everything.
Yeah. So Provincetown is roughly 1.5 miles long, depending on how far you really want to think of it. If you're going all the way to the border to Truro, it's about 2. And it sounds small because it is small. Mm-hmm. You can walk the length of it, and people do constantly. It's a very walkable place.
Right. But the two ends of the town are shaped very differently. The West End fans out. Mm-hmm. Think of it like a fan opening up from the center of town toward the water and the province lands, and it spreads in multiple directions, which means that West End properties tend to be relatively close to town center regardless of which street they're on.
Very true. Mm-hmm. And the East End, by contrast, is more of a corridor. Mm-hmm. It follows Commercial Street and Bradford Street as they stretch east, which means the East End can extend a bit further from the center of town. The further east you go, the more you're committing to a walk to get it anywhere.
So that said, and we really want to stress this, we're talking about a town that is 1.5 miles long. This is not a commute. This is a 10-minute walk at a relaxed pace.
Yeah, I've had longer walks to my car in a parking garage at Boston.
Right. So the geography matters, but it matters in a Provincetown way, which is to say gently.
Yes.
Okay. So the West End. Why do buyers want it?
Well, in our experience, it's a few things. Mm-hmm. The specific visual character of the neighborhood, there's some iconic spots, mm-hmm. and honestly, some of it is just brand. Yeah. The West End has cachet. People who visited P-Town know the West End as the West End.
Right. And from a marketing standpoint, that perception is real, and it shows up in the numbers. Generally speaking, West End properties command roughly a 10% premium over comparable East End properties. And that's not a hard rule. Every property is its own thing, but it's a pattern that we see consistently.
True. On the rental side, the West End properties typically command higher rates, and they tend to see stronger demand, particularly in peak season. If short-term rental income is part of your calculus, the West End premium can make financial sense. Mm-hmm.
So the West End is home to some genuinely iconic Provincetown destinations. The Red Inn, Victor's, the Boat Slip, the Provincetown Inn, which has a pool that's open to the public. Another episode for another day. The Breakwater, which takes you out over the water, which is super fun to walk over, but you have to know when the tide's coming.
That's true.
And then
yes,
And then there's Boy Beach and Herring Cove.
And Relish.
And Relish, which Nate would like to mention.
Relish is a bakery and sandwich shop in the West End. It is exceptional. Genuinely one of the best things happening in Provincetown food-wise, and I am not biased.
Nate's husband, Frank, owns Relish.
All right, I said what I said. But the sandwiches are extraordinary. I hear it all the time.
Yes, they are. So moving on. The West End has a lot going for it. The premium is real. The demand is real. And for buyers where budget isn't the primary constraint, it's a completely understandable preference.
Now, the East End, which is where it gets interesting.
Yes. Historically, and this surprises a lot of people, the East End was actually where Provincetown's wealthier residents lived. The architecture reflects that. There are some genuinely beautiful, substantial homes in the East End that speak to a different era of the town's history.
Yeah, you'll see more Victorian-style homes in the East End than you do in the West End, which is one big difference. And when you walk down the East End of Commercial Street, you'll find a lot of diversity in the housing stock. A lot of them have real character. It's not a lesser version of the West End. It's just a different version of P-Town.
Right. Need a cough drop. So the East End is also the arts end of town. The Provincetown Art Association and Museum, PAM, is there. A significant concentration of galleries line the street. So if you're buying in Provincetown, partly because of its identity as an arts community, the East End is where that identity lives most visibly.
True. There's some excellent spots over there that people who fixate on the West End completely forget about. Finizzi's, which has one of the best waterfront dining situations in town. Angel Foods, Harbor Lounge, Farland Provisions, the East End Market. Genuinely good shops and galleries throughout.
And the homes, as Nate said, are diverse. Victorians, Cape-style cottages, more contemporary renovations. The streetscape is not uniform, which for a lot of buyers is actually the appeal.
Yeah, I've lived in the East End and I've then lived in the West End. Actually, it was the other way around. I lived in the West End first, then the East End. And now I live in the West End, but not far West End. I'm a person who, what I'm trying to say is I'm a person who's experienced both. And I'm trying to say I'm no further comment at this time.
He does have further comment. He's just maintaining the bit.
I am maintaining the bit, yes.
So why do buyers change their mind? Because they do. We see it constantly.
A few reasons. One, once you're actually in Provincetown looking at properties, the scale of the town becomes real. The distance between West End and East End stops feeling like a meaningful distinction and starts feeling like a pleasant walk.
Right. Two is budget. The West End premium is real. 10% doesn't sound like a lot until you're looking at what that means at Provincetown price points. And for a lot of buyers, the East End opens up inventory that the West End doesn't. And it's at the same or better quality.
True. 3, the East End delivers. People who say they only want the West End often haven't spent real time in the East End. And once they do, once they walk in, look at the homes, sit at Finizzi's, and the water view, the preference softens pretty quickly.
Right. And then there's what we call the convert phenomenon. Buyers who end up in the East End, sometimes reluctantly, and with a season, or within the season, are telling everyone that they know that the East End is the real Provincetown.
Yes, I may have been one of those people. That's all I'll say.
He absolutely was one of those people. Oh my gosh. So let's talk about what this means practically if you're a buyer right now.
Provincetown is a constrained market, and there's a finite amount of land, a finite amount of housing stock, and consistent demand from buyers who want to be here. Inventory is limited in both ends of town.
So if you come with us with a firm West End requirement and a firm budget, we will work within that. But we'll also be honest with you about limiting yourself to the West End in a constrained market. It means you're looking at smaller universe of properties, competing against buyers who have the same preference and potentially waiting longer for the right thing to come up.
Yep. If you're open to the whole town, you roughly double the inventory you have access to, and you may find that the property that's right for you is in the East End anyway.
So our mantra on this, and a lot of things in this market is that there's a lid for every pot. Buyers have different priorities, different aesthetics, different ideas of what Provincetown means to them. Some people belong in the West End, some people belong in the East End. Our job is to figure out which is which. And sometimes the buyer figures that out themselves once they start looking.
And at the end of the day, it's still all Provincetown. You're still in one of the most remarkable singular communities in New England. The 10-minute walk between the ends of town is not a hardship. It's a walk through one of the more beautiful places you will ever live.
Well said.
I have my moments.
So West End versus East End. No winner, no loser. Just two ends of a very special town, each with its own character, its own price point, and its own argument for why it's the right choice.
If you're starting a search in Provincetown and you think you know which end you want, great. Come talk to us. We'll take you seriously. We'll show you what's there. And we'll also show you the other end of town, just to be thorough.
And if you've had your own West End, East End conversion story or the other way around, drop it in the comments. We genuinely want to hear it.
Yep. If you converted to the East End and Finizzi's was involved in the decision, also let us know. We feel that is statistically underreported.
So like and subscribe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.
Take care.